Hello and welcome to Overcoming Self-Doubt. I'm Linda Chung and I've started this interview series because at the beginning of lockdown I felt like this topic was just being compounded as self-doubt was growing in people's minds at exactly a time when we really needed a lot less of it. This morning I'm joined by Julie Baker. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Linda. Lovely to chat to you today.
Lovely to see you. So Julie is Head of Enterprise and Community Finance at NatWest, but we know one another through sitting on the board of Enterprise M3. And I'm delighted to see that Enterprise M3 colours behind you.
I know. I think, what will we do next? Will we get a tattoo? Because you've got the lovely wall behind you. I've bought a new chair. And Kathy Slack, the CEO of Enterprise M3, will be so proud of us both. Flying the flag today.
Completely dedication to the cause. So, we work alongside each other there, but actually we met really more through your role at NatWest and the amazing work you've done through the Rose Review. So looking at female entrepreneurship. And I would love to cover that topic this morning because it's about the barriers to female entrepreneurship. And I guess if I look at the list of the 5 things that were identified, it's particularly fascinating to me that perception was one of the things actually written in black and white about a barrier to entrepreneurship. So the specific is perceived missing skills and experience. And I'd love to just delve into that a little bit, Julie, that self-doubt in terms of perceived missing skills.
Yeah, no, it's so important to talk about that topic. And let's just take a little bit of a step back with the Rose Review and the review into the barriers to female entrepreneurship. It is so important, not just to us as females, but to the UK economy, because we know from that report that if females were to open businesses at the same rate of men and scale at the same rate of men, it would be an extra £250 billion to the UK economy by 2030. So it's a no-brainer. So we really need to work hard to tackle those barriers. And you're absolutely right. One of the barriers is perception. We need to instill belief in more females, especially those from a young age, that they can be successful in business. So where does that self-doubt come from, and what did the research tell us? We spent a lot of time looking at previous research. We questioned and tested the barriers we found with 150 key influencers. But what I like most is when we spoke to the entrepreneurs, and particularly those in our own accelerator hubs at NatWest, which are in early stages of their business. And what they told us was they didn't have the confidence because they found it difficult to get the backing either from investors and quite often from family and sometimes friends as well. So it was quite easy to get support if you were going into a career where you're going to get a well-paid job. But if you were going back home and say, actually, I don't want to do that, I want to risk everything and set up a business because I've got this great idea, it was very, very difficult to get that, if you like, support. So what we found, particularly with females, that you need reassurance. You need reassurance all the time that you can do it. You can be successful if you follow your dream, if you get the right support and you work with the right networks. So, we find that a lot with accessing finance, and which came up as the main barrier. But when you look at the amount of females that actually ask for funding to set up their business, because of the lack of if you like, belief that it's the right thing to do, or the risk aversion that they don't want to take on risks, we see that females borrow a lot less than their male counterparts. So, what can we do to overcome those barriers? Well, first of all, there's lots of information out there about how to invest in your business and how it is a good thing to do it the right way. And we can make that simple, and we can do that through events, through webinars, and through programs. But that lack of confidence and that self-doubt in, can you make this a success? You just need those people around you to say, actually, with the right support, the right networks, and the right investment in your business, you can overcome those barriers and be a success.
Those peers are so important, actually, that networking, mentoring, because there's so many themes. So actually, thinking back to everything you just said there, Julie, amazing to think, isn't it? 250 billion of potential that could be unlocked, and I may have a tiger mum in my situation, but the sense of what you're going to quit, a senior role in a big corporate that you've been doing well in and paid you this much and you've had this much job security in, and you don't even truly know what it is that you're setting up in your business.
You're living proof that, it does happen and can happen. And what we see, particularly with a lot of females that work for corporates in their late 20s, early 30s, sometimes because they have families, but not always, it's quite often because they see their male counterparts get promoted over and above them. And they actually look at alternatives, and those alternatives are setting up their own business. And yes, that's a huge risk. But actually, the value that you can get, especially as a working mum, the flexibility, more time with your family, your own boss, there's lots of positives there. So it's great to have role models like you, Linda, that have been on that journey and experienced both worlds. But when you look at self-doubt, even in the corporate space, I know from my own experience and from my experience when I'm looking for people to join my team, there's so many people out there will look at a job application and think, I can do probably half of that, but actually I can't do the other half. Those people are normally the females. Whereas some of the ambitious, younger, if you like, male graduates may look at that and think, actually, I can do half of those. I can learn the other half, or somebody else will do them for me. I'll apply for that. So more important than ever before, that as leaders in businesses, we look out for those talented individuals so that we can sort of tap them on the shoulder and say, put your name forward. Because actually, if you're not successful this time, at least, you can get some feedback and you will become successful next time. And actually, 8 times out of 10, they probably will be successful anyway, because they'll find out the short list of people they're up against is exactly the same with them. Very rarely, when you look at sort of job applicants, can everybody tick every box.
Women, on the whole, tend to self-select out more than men. And when I remember being told this and thinking, oh my goodness, I do that. You're thinking, I can't tick everything on the list, so therefore I won't even apply. And a less qualified male colleague will. And you're not even up for the opportunity as a consequence because you didn't present yourself for it.
Yes, and that's really key as well, because I remember the first senior job I went for, first senior manager job in the bank. I was unsuccessful. And somebody persuaded me to go for feedback, because quite often the last thing you want when you've been unsuccessful for a role is to go for feedback. But I did go for feedback. And it became apparent from that feedback that I didn't articulate what I'd achieved well enough. And I didn't articulate it in a way that those that were, if you like, the decision makers, saw the, if you like, the most powerful part, the impressive part of the actions that I'd taken and the competence that I was trying to display. So over the next 12 months, I worked with my boss to just get together a number of examples and experiences that I could use in interviews and practice articulating them in a really positive way to get across the right things. And I think as females, we're far too humble about our achievements, even in interview. And so I do think it's worth for anybody taking that time out to think, okay, what are the best experiences or examples I can give to demonstrate that? And actually, how do I articulate that in a really succinct way so those that I'm, being interviewed by actually get what I've done and what I've achieved.
So kick away the false modesty about what you've achieved and actually take the time to sit down, reflect and capture what those achievements are.
Yes. And break them down as well quite often. And, I'm definitely for collaboration. And for me, it's all about teamwork and working with teams. However, when it comes to a job interview, you do have to make sure you use what you specifically did, to use I rather than we. And I think that as well is something that we need to practice, because as females, we talk as we, because that's what we like to do.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Great tips there. So thinking about how we capture it, how we phrase it, how we therefore articulate it better. And coming back to those themes earlier, we didn't quite round off on, for the female entrepreneurs, how to overcome that incorrect perception about their abilities. So some of it we just started to touch on in terms of mentoring and networks. And you were saying that sort of feeds into raising finance as well, how they see themselves. So how do we break those perceptions? How do we make sure that female entrepreneurs can go and get the funding and the profiling they need?
Yeah, so there's sort of four key areas, but the first one is very much access to the right information, and it is out there. And of course, with Google, everyone's got access to a minefield of information. But I think access to information is so important, especially for those communities that are harder to reach. And you know, when you look at minority groups, it's crazy to think that 51% of the population actually in business is a minority group, because women still only make up about 22% of businesses in the UK. So knowing where to go for that information, and it may be different depending on what you do, but there's some excellent support out there. We know there's the growth hubs and local enterprise partnerships. There's the British Library, excellent support, and of course there's the banks. And at NatWest we have 12 amazing hubs around the country, which unfortunately are closed because of COVID at the moment. But what we've done is digitise that programme. It's called Business Builder. It's all digital. You can dip in and dip out and do it at your own convenience. And I would recommend anybody setting up in business to seek out that sort of support to help with your planning, to help look at the sort of competitors in the marketplace to your product, look at your market research, you know, look at what networks will benefit you, talk about what finance you need, accessing finance, and of course support out there helping employ your staff as well. There's so much available. So access to information and educational information, which is the second point, access to educational information, webinars, you know, events once COVID's all over again. Just work those support groups and networks and build that really close support group around you, because I think any business, whether you're a small business or whether you're a larger business, you need trusted advisors around you. And they don't have to be full-time staff. They just need somebody you can go to. And even myself in my world, if I've, you know, come up against a problem, you know, there's 2 or 3 people that I can always pick the phone up to or go and talk to, and just, you know, sort of share that problem and talk through some, you know, so how do I get around this? You know, how do, and just sort of bounce those ideas off. And you need people as well that are going to be honest with you, because sometimes we see passion blindness, and you need to be told sometimes that actually that doesn't work, let's try a different way.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about that, because I think in my work as an exec coach, women are more aware to think to ask for help. That they are appreciative, much more factually appreciative of external opinion. When do I need to get that sounding board opportunity? When do I need to be able to voice out all my concerns right now? And so it's fascinating to hear how you've been very clear. I have my trusted network. There are 3 people I would think to contact. And I guess people in the earlier stages perhaps to start thinking about how they build that network around them.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, we've already mentioned mentors during this discussion. And I think having a mentor or a trusted advisor is so important. And that goes from whether you're setting up in business and you may need peer-to-peer mental support, or you may need somebody with experience that could just sort of help guide you on the way. Or you may need, like you've just mentioned, you're an executive coach, and I've certainly had an executive coach, and I dip in and dip out, and we meet at least 2 or 3 times a year. And whenever I'm in a difficult situation, I haven't got a chance to go and see my executive coach, and I don't mind mentioning her. She's already been mentioned on one of your other Zoom calls, and it's Kiki Maury. I just imagine Kiki sat on my shoulder and think, what would she do? If she was sat in this chair now faced with this, what would she do? And it really helps. And there have been times over the years where, you know, I've you know, questioned myself, and I have had self-doubt, and I think, is what I'm doing the right thing? Is it right for me? Is it right for the family? And, you know, there are exercises I've done with Kiki that have actually, and we call it got my star back. And one of those things, funnily enough, was working with local enterprise partnerships, because quite often, especially if you're in a career and you're working for an employer and you're thinking about development, you think that development or succession has actually got to come within the day job. It hasn't. And I've learned that over the last probably sort of 5 to 10 years. There is so much you can do to develop your skills, your expertise, and actually work on things you really enjoy outside your career. And for me, it's been working with external partners and it's great that I've been able to link them into my day job as well.
Yes, that sense of partnership, collaboration. And that sort of takes us nicely into your work with Enterprise M3. So obviously people that know us both will know that we work together there. But actually, there was an element of self-doubt that you mentioned to me early in that journey in terms of joining the board. Would you share that with everyone today, Julie?
Well, when I was first asked to join the board, I've got to say it was an absolute privilege. I've known Kathy Slack, the CEO, for several years. I've always been an admirer of Kathy's, but she's absolutely trailblazing when it comes to building a diverse team. And by diverse, I don't just mean gender, I mean in ethnicity. And actually, when you sit around that table, I'll never forget my first meeting, which was at the Army Barracks in Aldershot, and I just thought, oh my goodness, all of these CEOs, senior people from the public sector, amazing, incredible business people, all working in collaboration. And we talked about self-doubt, and I thought, how am I going to live up to some of what these, great people around this table, do day in, day out? But when you get talking to them, they're all just like you and I. We've all got roles to do in our day job, and we're all looking to do a little bit more to support the Enterprise M3, and we can all contribute in different ways. And for me, the collaboration between private and public sector is so valuable. And I think what Kathy Slack and her Enterprise M3 board is doing in the Enterprise M3 region is just phenomenal and leading the way. And it was a privilege last week to sit on the first ever digital AGM. And of course, we're all having to pivot what we do at the moment. There's changing priorities for all of us. But when you listen to people around that board, and it might be, the CEO of the zoo and how he's managed through the lockdown, whether it's somebody running a university, whether it's like you, Linda, running your own business, or whether it's me working for a bank, the one thing we've all got, if you like, in common is, we've all had to tackle all of the challenges of learning Zoom. It's become a day-to-day occurrence for all of us. There's the digital challenges, changing priorities, and having to work at pace. It's just been incredible over the last sort of 12 weeks. And we know that, the new normal won't at all be like the old normal. And that, what I'm really, really excited about with the Enterprise M3 is that we are now focusing on building back, but building back better and stronger and more resilient than ever before.
Yes, the themes of resilience and recovery are so
Yes.
centre to what we're looking at. And I think that theme of diversity that Kathy has been phenomenal at is because there's a real true appreciation around the board about the power of that diversity, the benefits of having that around the table. It isn't, as you say, it's not just a gender thing. Gender is almost the entry point, if you will, right? It's thinking about the differences of opinions, perspectives, experiences, and that makes us a stronger board because we have that richness of opinion around the table.
And helps us understand the community we serve as well, because across that community, we've got small businesses and we've got amazing corporates. We've got employees, we've got employers. A lot of the board live and work, or most do, within the EM3 region. And I just, you sit around that table in awe of the others and actually get really excited about what we can do to support in these, unprecedented times.
Yes. And as fellow board members, I think we can cheekily in this interview give a shout out saying that we do want more people to get involved. We want to be a diverse board that represents its region. So people that are interested to get involved should let us know.
Definitely.
Coming back to you, Julie, ultimately, in your own journey, because it's been a phenomenal journey, you've had 30 odd years in a very male dominated world. Ultimately, we've been talking a fair bit about gender today. What have been your key moments of knowing that you're pushing through different barriers for yourself?
I look back, and the way that I share it, if I talk to anybody about my journey and my story, it is those occasions where I took myself out of my comfort zone that I grew or developed or got the opportunities. And of course, there's absolutely no way that, when you're stepping outside your comfort zone and doing things for the first time, putting your hand up to ask a question with senior people there, talking around a board table, or, you know, wanting to get your point across, or presenting to a huge group of people. All of those things took me out of my comfort zone, but it's all of those things that have helped me grow. And of course, for every single one of those, there has been an element of self-doubt there, and have had to sort of talk to myself and get the right people around me to actually say, Julie, you can do this, or Julie, it is right to do that. And you learn along the way how to make those things slightly easier, if you like. So, you know, and for some it is just the preparation, but for others, and I'll never forget the first time I sat around a board table. I was the only female, and it was all males, and I just didn't get my voice heard. And it's, you know, and you hear those stories, and it's happened to me. You say something, you don't get heard, then, you know, one of your male colleagues will say it about half an hour later, and they get, yeah, great idea, and you just, there's two ways you can go with that. You can go, oh, I just give up, and, you know, they're not going to take any notice of me. Or before the next meeting, you talk to the chair and you say, actually, you know, I found it difficult to get a wording edgeways last time. I didn't get heard. Can you bring me in, please? And you find that they do. So, you know, and sometimes, I like the book by Charles Sandberg where she talks about lean in. I wouldn't necessarily say lean in, but sometimes you maybe do have to sort of lean in, do something physical to make sure actually that you are heard. And you know, I don't like to raise my voice, but women's voices are softer than men's. So sometimes we do have to learn to speak a little bit more loudly, you know, not shout, but just to be heard. And it is uncomfortable, and it is taking yourself out of the comfort zone. But we need to do that, you know, and women are now speaking up on far more in society than they have done in the past, and that can only be positive.
How did you find the strength or courage to talk up to your chair in that situation?
For me, with the chair, and I include Dave Baxton, the chair of Enterprise M3 in this, and every chair where I've sat around a board table, you're there really at the invitation of the chair. And they want to get the best out of that board. So I've never found a chair that hasn't, you know, been supportive. You're pushing on an open door, really, because they want to hear. If they're a good chair, they want to hear the views of everybody around that table. That's why they've got that board table. So I just find that, and certainly now that I chair a few sort of boards as well, or even a meeting, you know, it is so important to bring in everybody, just to make sure that everybody's views are heard, because sometimes the best ideas from those that are quieter in the room, just because they haven't got the confidence to speak up. And if then you do get somebody who is much quieter, maybe an introvert speaking up, you know, I always make sure afterwards as well, you give them lots of praise, say, look, you've got to do that more often. It's a benefit for all of us and the organisation, you know, don't keep, and just help support, you know, that next generation coming through, so that, you know, they have, if you like, more courage to step outside their comfort zones more often.
I love it. So it's a rationalization, isn't it? If you have fear about approaching that chair, that almost you're having to say to yourself, but that suggests I don't trust him, respect him or her to do their role.
And I think it's the way you do it, isn't it? I think, you know, the way that I did it, and the way why we continue to do it is, you know, say, I found it really difficult in the last meeting. You know, can I ask for your help? Would you be able to? So, you know, you can do it in a nice way, not you didn't bring me in, you know, let's do it, you know, because that isn't what it's about. And at the end of the day, the chair would expect, you know, your board members to be confident, but actually when you are in a minority, you do sometimes need the support of others. What was really interesting, around that same board, but probably about 18 months later, we had 3 females. Once there were 3 females in the group, we didn't have a problem being heard. And that is because there's a tipping point, and it is round about 30%. And this isn't just with females, I think it's with all diversity. That actually, you know, what you find is somebody else would endorse a bit of what you say, or if somebody speaks over you, when, you know, somebody else would pick up on that and say, well, actually, Julie's got a point to say here, or Linda's got something to say. Let's listen to Linda. So you've got a little bit more camaraderie in that respect. So yeah, interesting. But I've got to say, at the Enterprise M3, my experience of the boards has just been incredible, because everybody gets to talk. Everybody has got such, you know, sort of interesting experiences, different examples, and sort of support to bring to the table. And it's a privilege to actually sit around that table.
No disagreement from my end here. And I think what I'm reflecting on is all the practical context you've shared there about those more difficult earlier board meetings, because I'm thinking about how to arm people to cope with the same when they're dealing with it. And here is a perspective, here is someone that survived it,
Yes.
that's saying, actually, there are things you can do all the way through. It is how to think about how you can present it. What do you want to get across? And you're there to contribute. So how can you best do that?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I'm a big people watcher these days, and I look at some of the MPs in Westminster, and you just think of the confidence and courage you need that first time if you're just newly appointed as an MP to speak up at Westminster. And I love just seeing, it's the hesitation sometimes, but then when they do it, the relief, and it's just incredible. And, sometimes with self-doubt, we think it's just us, but actually the best of the best can have self-doubt. We all need that extra support. We all need that preparation. We all need to, if you like, reflect, sort of think about it. And sometimes if you can look at those areas where, sort of self-doubt has crept in, and, quite often early in my career, and I had my children early on in my career, so sort of 25 years ago and 28 years ago. And when I look back to those days, that I returned to work, and I was quite unique going back to work in those days. So there's a huge amount of self-doubt, was it the right thing? Many of my bosses in those days didn't think it was the right thing, because a woman's place was behind the kitchen sink. So, and I had tremendous support from my family and my husband and my bosses at the time that really helped me through that really challenging period, which I know lots of working mums have, of juggling a career or your business with childcare and child support. And, there is that phrase, you can't have it all. And I do believe in that. I don't think you can have it all the time. But there are times when you can definitely have both, and it works. And I am absolutely, delighted with the route both of my children have taken. I'm extremely proud of them. They're both totally independent. I look back on their childhood, and do I wish I was around more? Absolutely, yes, I do. Sometimes I'm quite jealous of people like yourself, Linda, in COVID, spending lots of time with children. And then I hear them say, oh, Julie, you're so lucky your children have grown up, you haven't got to do the homeschooling and all of the other things. And it works both ways. I would have loved more time with my children when they were that age. But do you know what? We make the most of every minute we have together now. They're both in their own apartments. They're both independent, got great careers, really proud of them both. And it was a very, very, sort of challenging part of my career, though, when you were juggling that early stages of motherhood and a career.
And it is a juggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've had a few calls where I might have had to pause or turn the video off as a little one runs around the room. So I guess it's changing challenges at every stage, but it is absolutely seeing the lightness or the positivity of whichever stage we're at and handling.
Yes, yeah.
And on that theme, I'd love to finish today's conversation with, what positives, what things are you doing to keep that light and positivity in this quite strange time?
That's a good question at the moment, because the first few weeks of lockdown I found a real challenge, because I get my energy from meeting other people. But what I've started to do, and Zoom's been here from the start, but it's only over the last few weeks I've started to do things like this again. And because I used to do a lot of networking events, podcasts, panels, and sort of meetings face to face, actually these one-to-one sessions talking about, how we can support each other, experiences we're going through, I found have really lifted my spirits and help, and not only that, I've got an amazing team. They've always been based around the country. We've never gone to one office every day and sat together. But it's really important that we all support each other through this. And, you know, they have been amazing. They've organised quiz nights. We have a wellbeing champion that talks to us about, you know, exercise, our well-being. And one of the most valuable things from all of this for me is I've got to spend more time with my husband, who is still working, but when he comes through that door at 6 o'clock every evening, it's absolutely lovely because I haven't seen anybody all day. And we're getting this really precious time together that we probably wouldn't have had. And, you know, we spent time in the garden, and I think it's brought back to everybody what's really valuable in life. You know, local communities, family, all that support. And it isn't just all about, you know, for me, it was jetting off to London 3 or 4 times a week, which I absolutely loved. But actually, there's other things that I can really enjoy doing too.
Absolutely. And it's the true value of the things that we value. It's really getting to appreciate them right now. So, and on that supportive note, I really appreciate you taking the time for this series of interviews. The fact you've been so candid today, Julie, you know, sharing your perspective of different parts of that journey. The openness I've had throughout all these interviews of people saying it happens to all of us. That's been amazing to hear, and it's how we handle it. You know, how actually it might be seen when you first came to that board meeting. You're thinking, who are all these amazing people around the table, and they're thinking exactly the same of you as you join. It's how that perception is real for each of us, and how can we overcome it. So thank you so much, Julie.
No, thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure.